Welcome to this digital lecture where we'll explore the nature and realities of entrepreneurship and small business, looking at how entrepreneurial people use their enterprising skills to overcome challenges and to develop opportunities. So having completed your entrepreneurial scorecard, review the materials for this session and think about the areas where you marked yourself particularly high or particularly low, and consider how you might develop these skills in order to be more effective. So by the end of this session, you should be able to describe the range of challenges facing the two main categories of enterprising people. You should be able to identify the key characteristics of the enterprising individual, and lastly, you should be able to reflect on your own qualities as an enterprising person through practical exercises. So now let's look more closely at the nature of entrepreneurship, and we'll start with the intrapreneur or corporate entrepreneur. Now, when we look at successful innovation in successful companies, we always find small independent groups of imaginative action takers working to circumvent or even sabotage the formal systems that supposedly manage innovation. These people often form underground teams and networks that routinely bootleg company resources or steal company time to work on their own projects. They make things happen where those trying to innovate by the official route are still waiting for permission to begin. Entrepreneurs do incur some risk in that often they're working in direct contravention of their organisation's strategy, although they are doing so in the interest of the organisation itself. And this clearly has the potential to get them into trouble. In practical terms, entrepreneurs challenge the normal way of doing things, asking questions such as, is this the most efficient way the task can be performed? Can this technology or product or service be used in other ways? Can the task being performed be of value to additional recipients? Is this task still of value to others, or should it no longer be performed? Is there a different technology that we should buy that could efficiently execute this task? Or is there a way I could modify my work output that would be acceptable to my client or my user that would be easier for me to produce? Now, if we look more closely at the other group of enterprising people, the entrepreneurs, then we see the same kind of disruptive and creative behaviours. But here we need to make a further distinction between the small business owner and the small business manager. Both roles are central to the success or failure of any small business, and in most small businesses, these roles are generally undertaken by the same individual, at least in the early stages of the business's development. So here the first definition shows that in a large company, managers typically oversee an individual department such as marketing, sales or production. However, from the second definition we can begin to see the challenge facing the small enterprise, where the business manager is likely to oversee operations in all areas and they have to personally wear a lot of hats themselves. If the business has employees, and it falls to the business manager to keep workers aligned with the goals of the company, and the overall effectiveness of the small business manager is largely determined by their own unique mix of experience and personal attributes. It's also important to make a distinction between entrepreneurship and small business management. Entrepreneurs have a vision for growth, a commitment to innovation, a persistence in gathering resources, and an overriding need to achieve. An entrepreneur can become a small business owner, or a small business owner may become an entrepreneur, but they're not always the same thing. There are also real differences in the nature of small businesses and large businesses. From a managerial perspective, when compared to a large business, a small business is less likely to access government assistance, to export goods and services, and to use external financing, and to also want to grow bigger. There are also countless myths surrounding entrepreneurship. However, the reality is that every entrepreneur is unique and there's no set formula for the entrepreneur. What should be noted is that whether in a business you yourself own or within a company you do not own, being entrepreneurial is not simply a job that you do, rather it's both a way in which you view and interact with the world and also a lifestyle in itself. Entrepreneurs generally think about problems and potential solutions over a long period of time and make numerous mistakes or revisions of that idea before finding an answer to the problem. Entrepreneurs, like everyone else, are shaped by their own personal experiences and they'll draw on what they've learned in life for inspiration. Far from being loners, the successful entrepreneur draws on the skills and experience in order to achieve their aims. There's been considerable debate over the years regarding whether entrepreneurs are born or made, the so-called nature versus nurture debate. However, most agree that some of the traits and qualities we have discussed are likely to be found in the successful entrepreneur. Thompson 2004 suggests that there are 6 key characteristics of the entrepreneur. Focus, which is the ability to lock onto a target. Advantage, which is the ability to identify opportunities. Creativity, which is the ability to generate lots of ideas. Ego, which is the need to be in charge of one's own destiny. And team, which is the ability to find the right people. And lastly, social, which is the need to be working towards a cause. So now let's look at some of the data relating to entrepreneurial people, and here we're going to look at some of the key trends around entrepreneurship. So firstly, we have age, and timing is a critical consideration for many entrepreneurs, and most people do not leap into setting up a business until they feel that they're good and ready. The average age of company founders when they started their current business is 40, but why might this be? Next, we have family background, and a high number of entrepreneurs are sons and daughters of entrepreneurs themselves, and less than 1% come from either extremely rich or extremely poor backgrounds. But what does this tell us? The next factor to consider here is the phenomenon of serial entrepreneurship, and the research shows that the majority of entrepreneurs are serial entrepreneurs in that they launched on average 2.3 businesses. So why might this be? Then we have industry experience to think about, and 75% of entrepreneurs who start their own business have worked as employees at other companies for more than 6 years before setting up on their own. In addition, 90% of people starting a business do so in the same market and industry they've worked in. But do these figures surprise you? And if we look at the link between entrepreneurship and education, we find that 95% of individuals founding very large companies held a university degree, and 47% held an advanced degree. So is education an important factor? Next, we need to think about motivation, and of the key motivating factors for people setting up their own business, 75% wanted to make money, 68% wanted to commercialise an idea, 66% found the idea of starting a business exciting and appealing, and 5% starting a business for themselves did so because they could not find a job. But what are your thoughts on this? And if we look at marital status, we find that 70% were married when they launched a business. But how is this important? And we also find that 60% of entrepreneurs had at least one child when they launched their first business, with 44% having 2 or more. But again, is this an important factor? So the final question to consider here is, do these statistics surprise you, and what do they mean? So if we stay for the moment in motivations for the entrepreneur, we need to understand that entrepreneurship can also be triggered by push or pull factors. Pull factors can be important and include things such as having entrepreneurs in the family, the influence of role models, the desire for independence, the quest for success, or the pursuit of wealth. Push factors can be equally powerful and include factors such as the lack of job opportunities, unemployment risks, feelings of not fitting in, and the need to get out of the place or situation where we currently find ourselves. But entrepreneurs are only part of the picture. Enterprising people can also be entrepreneurs, as we've seen. And remember, we often refer to these individuals as internal entrepreneurs or corporate entrepreneurs. So here we have a list of key motivating factors for the employee, but it's important to remember that these factors are based on what employers think their employees want from their job. So look at this list and take a moment to think about which 3 out of the 10 motivating factors the employee would choose themselves as being most important. So as we can see here, there's clearly a disconnect between what the employer thinks will motivate the employees and what the employees themselves tell us motivates them. So now let's consider what qualities, characteristics or behaviours you would expect to observe in a successful entrepreneur or entrepreneur. So pause this digital lecture and take a minute to write down as many of these qualities as you can, and then restart the lecture and compare it to my list. So this is a fairly comprehensive list of enterprising attributes, and clearly some of these terms may have potentially negative associations, and we'll look more closely at this throughout the module. So now let's look at the characteristics of the small business manager, and it's important to note here that it's not a given that the qualities needed to start a business are necessarily the same as those needed to manage a business, whether that business is your own or not. Business managers are effectively responsible for overseeing and supervising a company's activities and a company's employees, and as a result, they need to have a range of traditional management skills and attributes. Business managers report to top executives in a larger organisation, but in a small company, the manager might either own the company or report directly to the owner. In many businesses, the role of business manager may grow out of a small business owner's desire to shed some of the multiple roles mentioned previously in order to focus on specific aspects of company expansion or market penetration. The business manager for a time may share duties with the owner as the owner gains trust in the business manager, and ideally the business manager and the owner will work synergistically to ensure that the business of running a successful business is attended to. This can often be a process of the owner relinquishing the functions for which there's a comparative disadvantage for his or her continued involvement. And whilst not every individual will possess all of these attributes in abundance, the key characteristics needed with a small business manager are as follows. So firstly, we have creativity, and this is the ability to generate and develop creative ideas and solutions. Next, we have leadership, and here the effective business manager leads by example, making decisions decisively and being a role model to others. Then we have goal orientation, which is the ability to focus on the objective rather than necessarily how to achieve it. And we also have to think about innovation, which is the ability to commercialise an idea or make it happen and gain value from it. Team building is also important, which is the ability to gather followers to share in the vision. Then we have risk-taking, which involves not being afraid to take measured and calculated risks. Dynamism is also important, and here the individual uses charisma, energy, enthusiasm and passion to develop ideas. Problem solving is also critical, and this is the ability to not be put off by barriers or obstacles that stand in your way. Business managers by definition are problem solvers who work to overcome the obstacles that may prevent a department or company from reaching its goals. And lastly, we have commitment, which involves demonstrating resilience and a determination to get the job done. One of the key characteristics of the successful entrepreneur or intrapreneur is good communication skills, which are commonly referred to as interpersonal skills. Some common examples of interpersonal skills are verbal communication, non-verbal communication, listening skills, negotiation, problem solving, decision making and assertiveness. Whilst the entrepreneurial leader will undoubtedly already possess strong interpersonal skills, they should always be trying to develop them by taking advantage of learning opportunities which present themselves. For example, training courses, action learning, coaching, delegation, discussion, reflection or other forms of learning. Another key attribute which is often attributed to enterprising people is their ability to take and cope with risk. But how important a factor is this? So if we take the example of the entrepreneur, consider this question. What percentage of small businesses cease trading within 1 year, 2 years and 5 years? And again, you might want to pause this lecture in order to reflect on this question. So you may find the answer to this question surprising, as the reality of business startup and the associated risk is often misunderstood. The actual figures are as follows. 19% of new businesses will not make it past the first year, 35% will not make it beyond year 3, and by the end of year 5, 60% of those businesses which started are no longer trading. Now let's think about the earnings of the small business owner and what they can expect to take from the business. And remember that for most people, making a decent living is a key motivating factor for self-employment. But what's the reality of earnings for the small business owner? So consider these questions. Of the estimated 4.7 million businesses across the UK, what percentage of business owners do not pay themselves a regular salary? What percentage of small business owners take home less than £10,000 a year? What percentage earn £32,000 or more? And what percentage of entrepreneurs earn over £150,000 a year? And again, you might want to pause this digital lecture and consider these questions. So of the estimated 4.7 million small businesses across the UK, 28% of business owners do not pay themselves a regular salary, 33% of small business owners take home less than £10,000 a year, 20% earn £32,000 or more, and only 2% of entrepreneurs earn over £150,000 a year. So considering the figures you've just seen around small business survival rates and earnings, Why might the survival rates be higher than some people imagine? And does the personal financial return for starting your own business justify the effort? And one of the main reasons why business survival rates are not as bad as many fear is the availability of professional business support services. For the small business, the main channel for accessing business support is through the business advisor. And according to Shaper 2013, a business advisor is someone who works with client businesses to provide specialised skills and knowledge in one or more particular aspect of business activities. They usually have considerable knowledge and experience that can be used to help solve problems. Advisors can benefit new or small firms by bringing in new ideas, providing a more effective use of resources, acting as an objective source of information and analysis, and by obtaining funding. However, research suggests that new and emerging firms are often unaware of the assistance that exists, are often reluctant to ask for advice, and are often sceptical of the benefits of such assistance. The enterprise network is the environment in which providers of business support operate. Some of the key players in the enterprise network are as follows. The Scottish Institute for Enterprise, or SIE, works nationally to promote and support enterprise and entrepreneurship in Scotland's students. The Prince's Trust supports young people to start up and grow in business by providing essential startup funding and mentoring support. Business Gateway is a publicly funded service contributing to the economic well-being of Scotland by providing access to free business support, including finance raising, and they are the main enterprise agency in Scotland. Entrepreneurial Spark, or eSpark, is the world's largest free business accelerator for early stage and growing ventures. Young Enterprise Scotland offers a variety of training programmes and development opportunities to young people across Scotland. The British Chamber of Commerce is a nationwide network of local accredited chambers of commerce serving tens of thousands of business members across the UK. Business Network International is the largest business networking organisation in the world, offering members the opportunity to share ideas, contacts, and most importantly, business referrals. And the Federation of Small Business is the UK's largest campaigning pressure group, promoting and protecting the interests of the self-employed and owners of small firms. So now let's think about you, and having completed the entrepreneurial scorecard and having reflected on the insight this provided, consider the following statements and identify which one best applies to you. So the first statement to consider is, I can see myself running my own business someday, and this implies you have a clear interest in running your own business at some point. The next option is, I can see myself running someone else's business someday, and here we're talking about managing a business that you do not and will not own. Then we have, I'd rather just work in someone else's business, and this suggests that at this point you do not have the desire to start a business or manage someone else's business. And lastly, there is something else, and remember there are other possibilities such as choosing to take time out altogether or choosing not to work at all. And remember, there's no right or wrong answer here, it's specific to you. The aim is to get an idea of how we instinctively feel about the world of business and our place in it at this point. Remember, this is subjective, and also this is a snapshot of a moment in time, and there are all sorts of reasons why your perspective may change over time, as we'll see. It's also important to note that skills and expertise required at startup are very different for that in an established business or going concern. And to illustrate this point, consider the following question. From what we've learned, what specific skills would be needed by the owner, manager and sole employee of a small electrical business turning over £35,000? And be prepared to discuss your thoughts in your tutorial session. Now consider what specific skills would be needed by the owner, manager of a small established family restaurant with a turnover of £400,000 a year and 5 employees, and again be prepared to discuss your thoughts in your tutorial session. The important thing to remember here is that while every business is unique, they'll face a range of challenges which generally fall into a number of categories. Firstly, we have training and support needs, and in a large organisation, most employers require a minimum of a university degree in business management or a related discipline to qualify for a position as a business manager. And business managers must have excellent written and verbal communication skills to direct employees and lead the company. However, in a small business, there's no such barrier. In order to be successful in business, the entrepreneur needs to be able to identify and address any key skills gaps very quickly. Next, we need to think about systems, and generally the business owner must develop their own operating, staffing, marketing systems and other systems, as these will not actually exist. And we also need to think about challenges around time, and in a young developing small business, considerable time is wasted simply through learning by making mistakes. And there will also be challenges around the product or service itself, as in a small new business, generally the product is not well established and it can be difficult to get customers behind the product as a result. And for most entrepreneurs, a key challenge is raising capital, and for the small business, raising finance is always hard regardless of how long the company has been trading. In general terms, the way to overcome these challenges is by obtaining appropriate resources, and again these fall into a number of categories. Firstly, we have financial resources, and business owners need to be able to effectively coordinate the activities of the business to ensure that their company has sufficient economic resources. Next, we have organisational resources, and here the size of the company will determine the type of activities the manager performs and the nature and extent of the organisational resources needed. Next, we have technological resources, and this is important as we live in a digital age, and business technology allows business owners to improve their company's business operations. Then we have physical resources, and this relates to the tangible capital resources which were used by the business over a longer period of time, such as equipment, plant machinery and buildings. Equally important is human resources, and the small business manager needs to develop personal qualities that will be helpful in performing his or her work in a more efficient manner. And lastly, we have reputation, and effective business managers develop a positive reputation through the adoption of a particular management style and by setting an example to employees. So I hope that's provided you with some insight into the nature of enterprising individuals and the challenges they face and must overcome in order to build a successful business or be successful in the organisation which employs them.